I'm an atheist, so just looking for theists to talk about what they believe and why they believe it.
I believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Oh, Christian. Any particular denomination, non-denom, or
I'm non-denom, and I'm a born-again Christian.
I gotta say, I've seen a big increase in non-denoms, away from like wherever it might be, just any particular denomination, whether whether it's just Presbyterian or Baptist or any of
Mm-hmm.
the things off of that. But I've seen a big push into non-denominational, which is interesting. Um, as a former Christian myself, I find that to be interesting.
You know why there's a bigger push?
I'm thinking it's because uh, when it comes down to it, the Bible itself is it's subjective to interpretation. It's like everybody's got their own interpretations. The reason why there's so many denominations, and each one of those denominations comes with kind of their own system or their own I would say framework of beliefs and behaviors um, and I would say ways of expressing their faith, and of course ideas when it comes to political systems, or political or social systems. So if people begin to disagree with those, as we see it from everything from Baptist to whatever, when people begin to disagree with those, they don't want to stop being a Christian because they think that Christianity they believe that Christianity is the right path. So they'll pull back and just go non-denominational, one that doesn't have all of the the hardcore stuff that they try to push on you is according to that one particular version of the faith. So I think non-denominational is just kind of like a good stopgap for it's just Christianity, it's just spiritualism. We believe what we believe regarding Christ and the Bible, and then that's it. We don't go to these extremes like handling snakes or speaking in tongues or anything of that nature, or anything extreme like Mormonism or anything of that nature. So I think that I'm seeing a big swing toward it because I've spoken to so many non-denoms, and not very often do I get Southern Baptists or whatever. Because I'm in the American South, so there's a lot of Baptists and Protestants down here.
What state you live in?
I'm in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So, and I've got three church within stone's throw of my house, which is hilarious.
Nice.
But yeah, just so like me as a former Christian, I was born and raised Methodist, brought up with my family, but I deconverted about the age of 13, and was pretty much went down the ladder until atheism, and I would say I was pretty much an atheist when I was 23, and been an atheist ever since. And now I do content, addressing theism and religion and this thing that things that it does. So I'm just curious as to why what led people to believe what they believe. Like you said you're born again Christian, so I'm kind of curious what led you to that.
So I grew up in a Christian home, like most people, but I got lost in the world and I was going down the wrong path, hanging out with the wrong group of people. And one day I decided to ask Jesus to come into my life. And I was praying and I felt the Holy Spirit. And it was a feeling I never felt before and made me cry. It was so powerful. And I started reading the Bible. And it was just speaking right to my soul.
Any particular parts with the Bible? Because I happen to I'm pretty well studied on it. I've read it a number of, just because I'm going to talk about it, I got to better understand the source material and any particular parts of it or it as a whole. Because I mean, my conclusion is after reading the Bible cover to cover a number of times that it really is kind of an immoral book in regards to a lot of things that it talks about.
I read the book of Matthew, John. That's the one I was reading when I really started learning about God. And yeah.
Do you think it's at all possible that, I mean, just for consideration, hypothetically, just that it may have been replacing possibly one addiction with another addiction?
Do you say addiction?
Yeah, like if you were if like whatever your previous vices were, like you said, you were in a bad place, whether it be emotionally or situationally or like this. but whatever led you to be in that bad place, that there may have been things that you did or behaviors that you were engaged in that you were just in a kind of a repetitive cycle. And then you realize, utility wise, you need to get out of that cycle, because
Mhm.
that's kind of like an addictive behavior, like either the thrill or the power or the rush that you get from it, whatever void you're filling there. And it becomes
Mhm.
addictive because you kind of get that dopamine hit and you're like, oh, yeah, this feels great. But then you realize it's destructive. So then you replace one addiction with another addiction in order to
Yeah,
fill the void.
I made prayer my new habit, and then miracles became my lifestyle.
Interesting.
Mhm.
And not to denounce, because I understand that these things do have a utility to them.
Mhm.
But would you say that these things are true about the world, or do you like this is what it is, or or is it because it has a utility for you, because it's able to do this and keep you from doing other things?
What do you mean? Like, is the Bible true? Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
I mean, that's why I'm asking you is like, do you come at this like this is an absolutely true book like this, or is religion and Christianity more of a utility for you? Is that it keeps you from doing other things that would be society, destructive or harmful to you or the people that you love?
No, this is the true word of God. And if people, I know people say that it was written by man, but it goes against every single man's desires in here. It tells us not to do everything the flesh wants to do. So, yeah, we
Okay,
have
that
we have to
sounds.
deny ourselves.
Now, I would never, if it does hold a utility for you, and I would never want to take that away, especially if this is the primary reason why you don't engage in destructive behavior, because I would never want anyone to engage in destructive behavior. And whatever gets you out of that, I think if it has a utility, is good.
Mhm.
Just so long as it doesn't get you into another position where then you are forced to adopt viewpoints that can get you into, I would say, irrational or illogical positions. So that, because when you open up the door to that, like typically, I'll go with this. The purpose of my channel, of my YouTube channel, and when I talk to theists, it's not about trying to strip it down, and it's basically trying to say, like, look, when you open up the door to these things, to things that are either unjustified or illogical or irrational, when you open up the door to these things, it can open up the door to you being victimized by people who may know more than you about this and know how to use it in a manipulative way, either to get money out of you, to get time out of you, to get energy out of you, to essentially take what's yours and make it theirs
Mhm.
through the shared belief, and that they just know how to use it more in a manipulative fashion. So when you start opening up the doors to believing things that there's limited to no justification for, that could victimize people. And the purpose of my channel is to kind of like get that out there so people can recognize that, look at their own beliefs, why they believe them, and does this possibly open up that door for them?
Yeah, so we have to have a lot of faith in God. We have to pray to God every day for Him to, give us miracles, and He will answer all of our prayers if we continue to pray every day.
So if someone, let me pose something to you, to this fashion. If someone's able to achieve what you have achieved,
Hmm.
without God, no,
Yes.
yeah, they find it, if ostensibly they find it within themselves.
Okay.
They recognize, they're self-aware, they do self-inventory, they're able to push through and eschew things that would be self-destructive or destructive to the people around them, and they recognize who they are, where they fit in the world, and do all of this without God. which
Yeah.
which one would you say has more merit?
So if you're a good person, that's good. If you do good works and you help out other people and you don't have God, God will still, you know, He will still bless you. But if that person was to die without God, then he would not make it to heaven. So it's all about believing in Jesus. because Jesus is the only way to heaven.
Well, you see, there's when you bring in heaven, when you bring in this notion of a thing after life.
Mm-hmm.
So, like from my position, see, it's just the way I look at it. Um, the idea of a heaven is completely illogical. It's a logical contradiction for this place to exist, and it's completely unnecessary. So if you look at it like from the words of Marcus Aurelius wrote in his meditation, or wrote, and if you ever check out his book series, the book series Meditations, really really interesting stuff. But in the words of Marcus Aurelius, it says, if there is like live a virtuous life, plain and simple, live a virtuous life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will honor you for the virtuous life you've lived, regardless of whether or not you believed or not, because of the life you lived, and they will
Mm-hmm.
welcome you. If they're gods and they're unjust, then you wouldn't have wanted to worship them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's no gods, you'll be remembered for the virtuous life you lived in that respect. So in this respect, that's why it's important in that, to recognize that, is the thing that we're believing and the thing that we're working towards rational, and what are we giving up going after this rational thing? Like, are we doing, is what we're doing for the right reason?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where are we putting our energy? Where are we putting our resources? Where are we putting our time? Because our time is valuable. Energy is valuable. Your resources are valuable to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the life you've built. And, examining it, like, the idea of heaven and all of the questions that come up with that. Like, do we have free will in heaven? Is evil possible in heaven, or is sin possible in heaven? Well, who
Yeah,
dictates what is sin and what is not sin? So on and so forth.
I have the answers for that if you want.
Well, you can throw the answers. I'm certain that you have answers that work for you,
Okay.
but I doubt, because okay, so think of it like this. So what would okay, let me ask. Let's look at this. Do you believe that God is omniscient, omnipotent, knows
No.
all powerful?
Yes.
Okay. So the omniscient being, and the omnipotent being, despite the fact that omniscience and omnipotence are logically contradictory, just having those two states are logically contradictory, because an omnipotent being who is also omniscient cannot do anything, cannot commit an action outside of the foreknowledge of its omniscience. So if it knows everything that's going to happen, everything that itself is going to do, then it's essentially just running on a track. And it can't operate outside of that track because it already knows what it's going to do. So that precludes omnipotence in that respect. So, but foregoing that, let's just say this being is this. What would preclude God from creating humans, all of us, in heaven with free will, with knowing everything he wants us to know, and experiencing everything he wants us to experience, essentially in the end state, and all of the suffering, and all the pain and the death and the suffering that occurs here on earth just is
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary, because he's all powerful. He could just create that, and he
Mm-hmm.
could just create us knowing what he wants us to know,
Mm-hmm.
because he already knows the end result, because he's omniscient. So why the see that's the big issue, is that what we observe here on earth doesn't really, you know fall in line with how God is supposedly described in the Bible, or essentially how God is describing himself in the Bible. Because essentially, by your belief, God is speaking to us through the Bible. He's describing himself through the Bible. That's where we get these attributes. So
Yes.
if those attributes are true, then why couldn't God just make us in the end state? No pain, no suffering, no death, knowing what he wants us to know, understanding. And
Because that's just not the reality of our world. We have pain, we have suffering, we have bad days. There's killings every day. People steal.
true.
We live in a very broken world.